Welcome to the launch of Tetangga, People, Places, and Objects Across Borders, a collaborative exhibition between Indonesian and Australian curators as part of the Australia-Indonesia Museums Project. Before we start, we wish to acknowledge the custodians of this land, the Wajok people of the Nyunga Nation and their elders, past, present, and future. I have a few housekeeping announcements. This venue has one emergency exit. Please locate the emergency exit on your right. Restroom facilities are located outside this venue, accessible through the entrance door on your left. All participants are kindly requested to switch their mobile phone to silent mode to avoid interruption during the session. For our digital participants, please be advised that the host will put everyone on mute to avoid background noises. And our event is expected to conclude by 7:15 p.m. with light refreshments served after the launch. Thank you for your kind cooperation and attention. We are now about to begin with Tetangga, People, Places, and Objects Across Borders exhibition launch, which has been developed as part of the Australia-Indonesia Museum AIM project. The AIM project brings together museum curators and heritage professionals from Indonesia and Australia to develop collaborative approaches to researching and interpreting significant objects. Through the co-curation of an online exhibition, the project has explored new stories about the relationship between both countries. 28 curators from 16 museums in Australia and Indonesia have worked to develop the exhibition. This event is co-hosted by the Australia-Indonesia Museum Project partners in collaboration with the Consulate General of the Republic of Indonesia in Perth. Before we commence our event, allow me on behalf of the co-host to recognize our attendees dignitaries. Ms. Listiana Oprananta, Consul General of the Republic of Indonesia in Perth, Dr. Hilmar Farid, Director General for Culture, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, Mr. Alec Coles, CEO WA Museum, John Molony, Pro-Vice Chancellor and Vice President, International Deakin University, Elena Williams, Australia-Indonesia Institute, Yudi Wahyudin, Director of Cultural Human Resources and Cultural Institution Empowerment, Sri Hartini, Acting Director of the National Museum of Indonesia, Directors of Museum from across Indonesia, AIM curators, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I shall now share with you the brief agenda for this evening. First, we will have the opening remarks delivered by three speakers, Mr. John Molony, Pro-Vice Chancellor and Vice President, International Deakin University, Ms. Elena Williams, Australia-Indonesia Institute, and Mr. Alec Coles, CEO, Western Australia Museum. After the first agenda, we will continue with the launch of AIM exhibition by Dr. Hilmar Farid, Director General for Culture, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology. And as the third agenda is overview and demonstration of the AIM exhibition. Lastly, the event will conclude with closing remarks conveyed by Ms. Listiana Oprananta. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, for the first agenda of this evening, I would like to invite our three speakers to convey the opening remarks, starting from Mr. John Molony, then continuing with Ms. Elena and Mr. Alec.
Thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here today. I'm joining you from Melbourne, Victoria. And so I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, or at least where I am today, the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation. and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and recognise the acknowledgement that's already been made for you that are in Perth. So distinguished guests and colleagues, for me, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all today to this important event. I've worked in international education for many years, and I've been a very regular visitor to Indonesia. Most recently, only a few weeks ago, when I had the pleasure of spending a few days in Jakarta and also in the wonderful city of Bandung. It's always a great pleasure for me to be in Indonesia and to make a contribution to the Australia-Indonesia relationship through higher education. This coming together today is important, and it's also timely. It follows a really important meeting of our Prime Minister, our new Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, to Indonesia just a few weeks ago. And I believe that was a visit which signals a new period of collaboration in the bilateral relationship. I'm excited about the future for our two countries and what the prospects hold over the next decade and beyond. It was wonderful to see Prime Minister Albanese and President Widodo bicycling together through the grounds of Bogor Presidential Palace. And I really look forward to more in the highest level of government and the possibilities that opens up for all of us who are so passionate about the Australia-Indonesia relationship. So that brings us to today in this wonderful project. The origins of the Australia-Indonesia Museums Project were in ongoing discussions between a growing network of colleagues committed to learning from one another and developing new approaches to cultural heritage and museums practice across the region. And I'm just amazed at this project, the amount of collaborators that have been coordinated and been so passionate and come together to deliver this amazing result today. The connections were developed through Deakin University's postgraduate programs in cultural heritage and museum studies. And that's something that I'm very proud to say Deakin University absolutely has a global reputation in cultural heritage and museum studies. So well done to my colleagues at Deakin. But beyond that, our relationships with Southeast Asian Museum Services, the wonderful Western Australian Museum, and the Australia Awards Fellowship that Deakin University ran between 2016 and 2017 have all contributed to this project, as has it through our growing relationship with the Indonesian Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology. Museums are places for stories about where we come from and where we want to go. Often these are national stories, and of course they hold great importance about who we are as a community and who we aspire to be. But we know that people, objects and stories travel, moving between countries, making connections and acquiring new meanings. And in troubling times, what those shared stories are and how those stories connect us become all the more important. The online exhibition that's been launched today is the result of an 18-month collaborative project between museum curators, many of them in Indonesia and Australia, looking to develop new ways of understanding the significance of objects in our collections. And I look forward to exploring the results of this collaboration. So I congratulate and thank all those who have been involved in the development of the exhibition. This project's been made possible through grant funding from the Australia-Indonesia Institute of the Australian Government's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and, as I mentioned earlier, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology of the Republic of Indonesia. I congratulate in particular Elena Williams from the Australia-Indonesia Institute and Dr. Hilmar Farid, Director General for Culture, for their great support. The Western Australian Museum Digital Projects team have done a wonderful job in producing the exhibition, and it looks absolutely stunning. I've been browsing it online. The project team, Andrew Henderson, Daya Metayani, Duarami Suryandari from Southeast Asian Museum Service, and Coralie Suter from Western Australian Museum, and Stephen Cook, from my colleague from Deakin University, all who've made this possible through their passion, their passionate commitment and hard work, which has really resulted in us being here today. And all of that, this great achievement, has been made through adversity of the global pandemic, COVID-19. And which necessitated many changes to the structure of the project, but the resilience has been magnificent and the results are evident today. Finally, many thanks to Consul General of the Republic of Indonesia in Perth, Listiana Operanta, for so generously hosting us, and all of you gathered at the residence today for the launch of the exhibition. So congratulations to all involved in this magnificent and wonderful achievement, and I look forward to further cooperation in the future. Thank you very much.
Miss Elena?
Yep.
The stage is now yours.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for that welcome. Thank you, John, for those kind remarks as well. Before I begin, I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm dialing in from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country here over in the ACT. And I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and pay my respects to any First Nations guests with us on the call or in person tonight as well. So it's a real pleasure to be here tonight. My name's Elena Williams from the Australia-Indonesia Institute. And I'd like to also extend my thanks and respect to Ibu Listiana Oprananta, the Consul General for the Republic of Indonesia in Perth. Thank you for hosting tonight, Ibu. Also to extend that thanks to Dr. Hilmar Farid, Director General for Culture at the Indonesian Ministry for Education, Culture, Research and Technology. It is wonderful to have your support. Thank you, Pat. I also understand, I'm not sure because I can't see who's in the room, but I do know that Bapak Emil Elestianto Dada, with the Governor of East Java, has been visiting Perth recently. So from the Australia-Indonesia Institute, we extend our salams, Pak, to you as well. And also to Ibu Fiona Hogarth, Australia's Consul General to Surabaya, who's been accompanying him as well. So passing on our thanks and salams to you all as well. Also to John Molony, thank you for those remarks as well from Deakin, to Alec Coles from the WA Museum, and of course to all of the project team on the Australia-Indonesia Museums Project who have made this wonderful launch possible, everybody behind the scenes. I think there might be too many to list, so I will hold off, but thank you so much for all your hard work. So ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good evening, selamat malam. As I said, I'm Elena Williams and I'm a board member with the Australia-Indonesia Institute. And I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person tonight. I had every plan of being in Perth this week and unfortunately COVID had other plans for me. So I'm delighted though to be able to Zoom in and to be out of bed and actually Zooming with you tonight. So it's lovely to see you, all of your smiling faces. The Australia-Indonesia Institute is an independent institute for those of you who are not familiar with our work. We sit within the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT, within the Australian government. And our purpose and our mission is really around deepening Australia-Indonesia people-to-people relations and deepening those ties between Australia and Indonesia. Since 1989, we've supported a range of initiatives across the education sector, sporting, religious projects, media, health, business projects, and of course, initiatives in the arts and culture, which is why we're all here tonight. One way that we do this at the AAI is to support an annual grants funding round. And it gives me great pleasure tonight to see this project, Tetangga, through the AIM team and all of their hard work, which was one of 18 projects that we funded during COVID, to see this come to fruition tonight, particularly as John has already mentioned, given the challenges that we've all faced in the past 2 years, particularly in the arts and culture sector, which has been very hard hit by the pandemic. So to see this kind of collaboration go ahead is truly remarkable, and I take my hat off to everybody who has been involved. The AAI funds arts and cultural projects like this because we believe these offer really unique perspectives on the lives and stories that we share as neighbours, as Tetangga. It offers us opportunities to get to know each other by sharing our culture and sharing our histories and stories. We were particularly excited at the AAI when we saw this grant application come our way. And we were excited by the opportunities that this project presented, not only for Australians and Indonesians to understand each other's culture and stories a little bit better, but also to really deepen that sense of collaboration, which I've mentioned and our wonderful MC alluded to earlier on as well, where we've seen 28 curators, I think, and 16 museums working together across Australia and Indonesia in this project. So that depth of collaboration and that breadth of collaboration is really remarkable, and certainly something that stood out to us in that particular grants round. So once again, I'd like to commend the organisers and the collaborators involved. I can only imagine all of the logistics and certainly the WhatsApp groups that must be going on in this project. As John mentioned, I'd also like to add that, just last week, it was really wonderful to see in Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's visit to Indonesia, not just to Jakarta, but also the second day to see him travelling to Makassar and making reference to a story that I'm sure is very familiar with people on this call and in this room about the earliest exchanges between Australia and Indonesia, between the Bugis sailors from South Sulawesi in Makassar, and then also with the Yolngu people in northern Arnhem Land in the NT. This is a story that many people are familiar with in Australia-Indonesia circles. We hear this many times, and yet I think it was very significant for Prime Minister Albanese to mention this last week, because I don't think that this story is well known enough. Outside of the familiar circles, outside of preaching to the converted, people outside those circles don't necessarily know about these early exchanges. And these exchanges that were built around trade, which then led to friendship, and then led to relationships being built and exchanges in language and culture and stories among neighbours, again, among Tetangga. So really, it's in the spirit of that kind of collaboration that's been going on for hundreds of years between Australia and Indonesia that I would just once again like to commend everybody involved in this wonderful project. And like John, I've had a chance to have a look around the website today, and it's looking absolutely fantastic. So I'm looking forward to seeing the sneak peek in a minute and the demonstration. But I just want to, on behalf of the Australia-Indonesia Institute, I want to congratulate everybody involved and just and to commend your efforts and your hard work that's gone on behind the scenes. And long may these kinds of collaborations and exchanges continue between Australians and Indonesians as Tetangga. So thank you and selamat malam. Terima kasih.
Mr. Alec, the stage is now yours.
Selamat malam. So pleased to be here this evening. Consul General, Elena Williams, thank you for hosting us this evening. It's very kind of you to do so, and I look forward to the next week where we will develop these ideas further. Dr. Farid, Director General, Culture Ministry, Education, Research. Professor Molony and Elena as well. Many people as who did there, and Andrea Whitcomb. Great to see you, Andrea. The now legendary Gay Sculthorpe, And I was going to describe John Stanton as an elder statesman, but he probably wouldn't appreciate that. Look, thank you. And the great thing about going third is everybody said everything that I was going to say, so I will be brief. But it is an honor to be asked to be part of the opening of Tetangga, People, Places and Objects Across Borders. I do this job because I believe museums can change lives. I think they are an incredible source of exploring identity and actually building relationships between cultures, and there could be no better example than this. An exhibition that was originally conceived by Australian-Indonesian curators following a meeting in Jakarta in 2019, and pay tribute to my colleague, Karali Suter, who was at that time conducting research for her Collecting the Sea PhD, she's doing with Deakin, but also collecting information for the new museum project, which has now emerged as the WA Museum Wurabada here in Perth, of which of course we are very proud. Wurabada in Noongar means many stories, and that's exactly what this is about. It's about many people sharing their stories in their voices. Not curators telling them what to say or speaking for them. It is their stories told their way, and that's so important. And again, both our previous speakers have spoken about the importance of the relationship between Australia and Indonesia. We are neighbours, Tetangga, and we have, I suppose, enjoyed a relationship that sometimes waxes and wanes, and there could be no more important time than now to strengthen that relationship. The importance of Indonesia and indeed the ASEAN alliance of countries is particularly important to us in this time of uncertainty. Of course, this, like so many projects over the last 2 or 3 years, was going to be a physical in-person project, but COVID-19 happened, and so it was changed to an online model, and the fruits of that are here before you this evening. And again, I would like to pay tribute to our digital team, represented here by Sarah and Erin, for their work on that, which has made something that I think is truly, I think we're all very proud of. It was interesting because I know the curators took part in a number of workshops, including significance workshops. Everybody knows I've got a bit of a thing about significance, and so we'll have that debate afterwards. But I'm very pleased that we're able to do that. And it's wonderful to host a dual language site that isn't reliant on Google Translate. So hopefully it'll be a little more reliable than that. I do want to thank Dr. Farid for the support, and of course the National Museum of Indonesia and the Ministry for generous support of the project, and of course our colleagues in DFAT. Elena, thank you. And as ever, Listiana, I know that you've been an enthusiastic supporter and engaged certainly with the WA Museum extensively in your time here, and we look forward to much more of that. Over 80 museums across 19 provinces and over 150 people involved. An extraordinary project in every sense. Congratulations to everybody, and honestly, it's an honor to be part of it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Mr. John, Ms. Elena, and Mr. Alec for the insightful remarks. I now have the pleasure to invite Dr. Hilmar Farid to officially launch the AIM exhibition. The stage is now yours.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Selamat malam semuanya. The Honorable Ibu Listiana Prananta of the Indonesian Consulate in Perth, and colleagues and friends from the Deakin University, Australia-Indonesia Institute, Western Australia Museum, the Ministry of Education, Cultural Research and Technology of Indonesia, and also, of course, the participants of the project. It is an honor for me to attend the official launch of the Australia-Indonesia Museum exhibition entitled Tetangga, which literally means neighbors, but in this context, it also includes places and objects cross borders. The project shares stories about our countries and, more importantly, the different connections that we have both in temporal and spatial terms, from the Marege-Makassar relations back in the 17th century, as has been mentioned before, to the most recent movement of people and objects. And as we know, today's event is the culmination of a series of workshops throughout 2021 and the co-curating process earlier this year under the Australia-Indonesia Museums Project. So I would like to thank the curators, historians, researchers, photographers, designers from Indonesia and Australia who have contributed to develop this exquisite online exhibition, and of course, all the participants and mentors who have participated in training programs. And I hope that the knowledge transferred from the beginning of this project up until the commencement of this exhibition will continue being passed to other museum professionals in the effort to further develop museums and culture across Indonesia. And furthermore, the previous connection that Indonesia and Australia have fostered hopefully will garner future collaborations for the strengthening of a global cultural ecosystem. And on that note, I hope everyone will enjoy this exhibition and be able to learn more about our rich histories. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Hilman. Moving forward, we will have the overview and demonstration of AIM exhibition. I now invite Ms. Nusi Lisabila Estudiantin, National Museum of Indonesia, Mr. Andrew Henderson, Southeast Asia Museum Services, and Ms. Corioli Suter, Western Australia Museum.
Good evening, everyone. Selamat malam. Bu Nusi, ayo, jangan telat. My name is Andrew, and I'm happy to be here tonight and sharing with you a little bit about the AIM project, along with my colleague Ibu Nusi from the National Museum of Indonesia and Corali from the Western Australian Museum, and also Erin from the amazing WAM Digital team. And I think we're here tonight actually representing a lot of people, so many different people, so we feel privileged to speak about the project on everyone's behalf, I think. So I think I have some slides. So I might go to the second slide. So I think I'll just recap just very quickly. We actually presented today at the Amaga conference in Perth. So apologies, some of you may have already seen these slides, but we'll go through very quickly. I just wanted to just recap on just the three main objectives and ideas of this project. And first of all, we're looking at innovation. So how could we develop collaborative approaches to understanding the cross-cultural significance of objects and how they're interpreted. Secondly, and I think this came through in our opening remarks, we're really interested in connections. So not just connections of objects, but also of people and places. And through these connections, we've actually worked together to develop an online exhibition, which we're going to look at this evening. And thirdly, and I think most importantly, the objective was really to develop these long-term partnerships between Australian and Indonesian museum professionals and their institutions. And I think this launch tonight and these opening remarks are really testament to this, this cooperation, which I think is really beginning, and hopefully this can be the start of something even bigger. Next slide, please. So here, I won't go through this in too much detail, but this is really a little bit a recap and timeline of what we've been up to over the last year and a bit. So as you can see, we've crammed in a lot of different activities, beginning last year in May, I think, yeah, where we had the project launch, and Pak Hilmar Farid actually gave the opening remarks at our launch. So it's very nice. Pak by Hilmar to have you here virtually to officially launch the exhibition. Following the launch, we had a number of workshops, significance and interpretation workshops across Indonesia, involving many different regional museums who kindly shared their collections and worked with us to host these significance workshops. And of course, we've been building up together to this online exhibition, which we're launching this evening. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit of a snapshot of the number of people that have been involved in the training. Alec mentioned in his opening remarks. We think it's quite remarkable. And here I'd really want to thank Pak Yudi. I think Pak Yudi is on the call, the director of the Directorate of Cultural Human Resources and Cultural Institutions in Indonesia. And Pak Yudi and his team working in cultural heritage and training programs across Indonesia, and they were our partners for this training. So I think there's a lot of people to mention, but I'll just mention Ibu Susi, Pak Wawan, Pak Bowo, Pak Hari, Pak Isti, and many others from the team, because as you can imagine, Elena Williams had many WhatsApp groups, and there were many WhatsApp groups. We had so many WhatsApp groups. Each one of these trainings, we had a separate WhatsApp group where we were involving all of the participants, discussing, exchanging information. And this was all facilitated by Pat Yudi and his team. So a big thank you. And we were able to have this big impact. So involving 80 museums, 150 people, more than 50 objects across 19 provinces. Next slide, please. And we also worked using the significance methodology, which was a very important and useful framework for us. And this methodology has been translated, but not just in terms of language, but in terms of how it may fit into the Indonesian context. So we worked a lot with curators and Ibu Nusi and the whole team to really critically look at this approach and develop different case studies in the Indonesian context. And this Indonesian version of significance will be published next month, we hope. And the Ministry of Culture will also help distribute this to museums across Indonesia. Next slide, please. So here I just wanted to, I think I'll pass on to Ibu Nusi. So Ibu Nusi is going to introduce the Indonesian creators who have been part of the project. Ibu Nusi.
Good evening, distinguished guests. It's a great honor for me to be part of this amazing project. On behalf of the AIMS curator, I would like to thank all those who have supported us in increasing museological knowledge, in understanding the meaning of the object through the 2.0 significance method. The significance method is suitable to be practiced in museum in Indonesia because it contains many aspects such as history, provenance, aesthetic, social, and so on. This method can be used by museums that complete their database. It is very valuable experience to be able to collaborate and exchange experience with AIMS curator from various regions in Indonesia, and also curator from Western Australia Museum. From the significance to creating an online exhibition together is a pleasant experience, even though we are busy with our own tasks in our museum. In this online exhibition that launched this evening, the National Museum of Indonesia supporting financing for digitization, the creation of 3D photo and video by professional photographers very latif and talented young local photographer. You can enjoy the result in this Tetangga exhibition. We hope this project does not stop here. A lot of ideas and possibility to make a bigger and spectacular musicology project. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I think I'll pass to Karaili. Did you want to begin with the demonstration and introduction? Yeah.
I think so. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, I'd just like to follow on from my colleagues here and just to say what a pleasure this whole project has been. As we said earlier, we were initially disappointed that we couldn't get face-to-face. That will be part 2. But I think the reach has been much broader. It's enabled not only a large number of our Indonesian colleagues to be involved, but also colleagues from the Western Australian Museum, and some of them are here, and I'd like to acknowledge the curators as well as our digital team that have been really important in making this happen. We are working in 2 languages, and there's been lots and lots of editing, and my team, the history team in particular at the Western Australian Museum, have been amazing. So thank you for coming and helping us with that. Today we just thought I brought Erin because she is our driver for this digital exhibition. Would you like to share the screen? So before we begin, we've designed this as a digital app mainly for mobile phones. So we're going to show you that viewpoint. You can see it through a laptop and desktop computer, but most people these days are accessing this material on the phone. We've divided it up. It's simple to navigate. We're interested in people being able to connect object with place. And we're also keen for people to see the diversity of places these objects come from. For a lot of Western Australians, we have a very minimal understanding of Indonesia, and it's how vast it is and the variety of cultures within it. So from a Western Australian perspective, and this is something we've learned through our own exhibitions, Travellers and Traders in the Indian Ocean World in 2016 and later with Bula Bardip, is that this digital medium gives us a great opportunity to learn more about the cultures that are just on our doorstep from our Tetangga. So what we would like to show you initially, what Erin is looking at here, is we have a map view. So people can go in if they're interested in place to see firstly where that object comes from. So in the case here, we're looking at Perth. Presently, we can see where the object currently resides. We have capacity to actually then put those connections to where those objects originated from and how they've travelled around to arrive. A good example, which I'll show in a moment, is the portico from the Batavia, which is on display in our Geraldton Museum, about 4.5 hours north of Perth. The portico was actually due to arrive in Jakarta in the late 17th century, but it was aboard the fated ship Batavia, which my colleague Catherine Belcher gave a great overview of that event earlier this afternoon. So now it was actually found lay for 300 years on the bottom of the seabed off the Abrolhos Islands, which are about 60 kilometres off Geraldton. When excavated, it was brought back to Fremantle, where it was conserved and then reconstructed in our shipwrecks gallery. And this website actually shows you some of that process. We give you the historical background, looking at the images of where it was destined. There's lots of 17th century prints and drawings that show you the water port at Batavia Castle, where it was destined for, but never made it. I've actually had researchers do 3D models, as you can see here, and we've replanted them back into an original image where it was missing. So we're having an opportunity to play digitally with our object in ways that we don't normally do, and share it with quite a broad audience. That object is a gateway object, and we've certainly in our ebook on the Abrolhos, which we talked about this afternoon, in our exhibition, in our Amiga conference, we'd love to see that eventually in Museum Bahari, and I've certainly spoken with the curators about having that some displayed digitally as another way in. So this is, again, the first of our projects, we hope. Some of the other objects we'd like to show, and this is for Pak Hilmar Farid, our clove boat. This is one of my personal favourites. I learnt about clove boats when we borrowed one from the British Museum. I know they're quite rare. They're current in collections in Indonesia. They're from Ambon originally, and also the Netherlands have quite a good collection, the US and the British Museum. This one, when we were doing content development for the new museum, I actually, my son found it at in a antique shop in North Fremantle. He'd seen the exhibition of the British Museum one, and he was only about 5 or 6 at the time. He ran to me, we're having lunch, and he said, "I found a clove boat." And I thought, what? I went in there and he had. So this clove boat we have on display, we believe was formerly owned by a Fremantle 19th century merchant Lionel Sampson, who had business dealings in Indonesia. They were souvenir objects, and they were brought by 19th century colonial traders. And this is an example. It had ended up in a deceased estate, which we believe, I think was a great niece, a relation of that great niece who'd had it. There's not a lot of archival work around it, but from what we can deduce, it was once owned by Lionel Sampson. So it's a beautiful, beautiful object. It's called a kora. The vessel itself is based on a kora and a mix with a panisi and other European style vessels. It's a stylistic type rather than actual type. It's made, we actually have it within a box on display in Boulevardier in our Connections Gallery. It's so pungent. It still smells of that beautiful clove smell. It's stitched together with pineapple twine. And on the below decks, you have the oarsmen. And on the top decks, there's a gamelan orchestra keeping the beat for the oarsmen. It's an astounding object. And just to be able to share something like that digitally with our colleagues is a really wonderful opportunity. Some other objects we have a Wayang Golek collection as well. We've been able to put on display, working with the Museum Wayang in Jakarta, working with Dalangs and the curators there to get an understanding of these objects. So we'll just have a look at one here. We can actually show in some of the imagery, some of the collections, and this is some of the research that I did as part of when I was there in 2019. But again, understanding the changing meanings of these objects. That leads us back to our theme. So we have all these wonderful objects, but we also need to bring them together in some sort of framework. We work together with our colleagues to have some themes, changing meanings, looking at how objects, our understanding of them changes when they move through time and space. Colonialism and its legacies and the impacts this has for Australia as well as our Indonesian friends, and also the movement of people, objects and practices. And just to mention that Western Australia has a long and enduring contact with Makassar, Roti and Timor from the Southeast Asian Tripang fishermen that came to our coast. It's not a well-known story. We know Yolngu people and that ongoing connection, but certainly it was happening here in the north and northwest with Queenie Balangara people and Warrnambool and colleagues at Western Australia, the Western Australian University of Western Australia, and the museum have been working for the last few years with traditional owners to understand those connections and working on archaeological sites. And what really excites me is traditional owners here are so keen to work with our Indonesian curators and friends to better understand the cultural heritage which Indonesian visitors have left on our shores. So again, there are so many projects here, and so it's really, really wonderful to have the support of all our colleagues, institutional colleagues, and also from DFAT. Yeah, would you like to talk about any other objects? That's enough. Do you know, we've actually got you can actually get your mobile phones out and have a go yourselves, everyone. I think we've got the
URL. The URL for the website is tetanggaexihibition.com, which you should be able to see at the top of our screen there that we're sharing. The exhibition will appear in English or in Indonesian, depending on the language settings that you have on your internet browser. You can also change that by scrolling down to the menu at the bottom of the website. While I have the microphone, I'd just like to add thanks to our designer, Scott Bamford, who did these beautiful graphics for the website, and to our developer, Andrew Rowe, who's been working hard on the code in the background. And also to our manager, Sarah Dunbar.
Okay, thanks everyone. Do you mind if I have the PowerPoint presentation? I think we have a concluding slide on possible next steps after the AIM project. So I think it's the slide 12. Oh yeah, maybe we'll stop on this slide quickly. So here, just actually on our call today, we actually have the heads of these regional museums across Indonesia. So they're joining us on our call. So a very big welcome to you all. So we can see here, these are the different museums who have kindly helped contribute to this exhibition, host the trainings, and also contribute their objects and time and resources. So there's many people on this list, too many to list individually, but a big thank you to you all. We really appreciate your work and your support to make this possible. Okay, maybe we can go to the last slide. So this is maybe a concluding statement and also a provocation perhaps for some of you. I mean, we have this project, but just personally from our discussions, we don't want it to finish here. We think this is a model that can be developed further. So what could be some of the steps that we could do? So we think we could build on this AIM framework. We think it's been a very successful framework. So we can consider how we can build and further develop on these connections that have been made. Also, we think opportunities for short courses and visits from museum professionals to Indonesia. I know all of the Indonesian curators who have been part of this project, they're actually waiting to visit the Western Australian Museum and to come here. So we hope this can be a step to have these kind of exchanges in the future. And of course, Australian students, we have Deakin University here, representatives from Deakin. I'm actually an alumni from the Deakin Master's course in Cultural Heritage. And through that course, I was actually able to do a placement at UNESCO Jakarta, which really took me off on a path of being involved in the museum and heritage space in Indonesia and in Southeast Asia. So how can we develop more of these opportunities? And I know we have Professor David Hill from Achichis and Liam from Achichis, who I think are on the call. So we have this Achichis framework and these connections. So how can we tie this into the museums and heritage space and leverage those connections, especially with universities and heritage programs in Indonesia? And I think just finally, I think we can also look at touring exhibitions and ways that we can collaborate together on exhibitions. I know Ibu Nusi is she's, if you don't mind me speaking on this, Ibu Nusi is curating an exhibition. Did you want to share, Bu, maybe?
Yeah, about the Digul Gamelan, it is the important item for our next exhibition about revolution. It describes about the someone who called because he defend of Dutch colonial. He's a gamelan player, and he's sent to Digul. At that place, he feels lonely, and he create the gamelan from Sardinian cane. Yeah. And then this gamelan now in Monash University. And we are very, I hope we can display this gamelan in our next exhibition next year about the Revolution of Indonesia.
So thank you, Bunusi. That's it could be another Australia Institute grant, perhaps. Ellie Williams, yeah. But I think there's a lot. It's just an example of these connections and the practical things that we can work on together. So on that note, I think, did you want to add anything else, Crowley? But I think we'll say just thank you, and to all of the curators. I think you're on the call, the curators from the AIM project. We really wish you were here tonight, but we're thinking about you, and we look forward to celebrating with you all when we get back to Indonesia. So terima kasih dan selamat malam.
Thank you, Ibu Nusi, Pak Andrew, and Ms. Corioli. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, as we approach at the end of our event, I kindly request for Ibu Listi to deliver the closing remarks.
exhibition. And I don't know why I'm a diplomat. I should have been working at the museum. Must be much more fun. Looking at the history, the relation, it's so amazing. I had goosebumps just looking at that exhibition. I'm sure I'll be crying perhaps once I look into the website. But I like to acknowledge Alec Coles, Pak Dirjen Hilman, and John Molony, Ibu Elena. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Especially, I like to send our sincere appreciation to Dr. Stephen Cook. I'm sure he's not here. He's in Iceland. He's in Iceland having a good time. Lucky him. Although it's cold, I'm not envious of that. And of course, Pak Andrew Henderson, Ibu Coralie Sauter from WA Museum. I mean, this exhibition shows a tremendous thing that we can explore as a neighbor. I don't think we really understand that we are neighbor. We are friends by choice, not just because of the proximity, but we choose to be friends. And those artifacts, those exhibitions are shown that we've been friends forever. We will be friends even further. So I hope this is not the last collaboration that the consulate here and Indonesia and Australia is going to have. Hopefully this is just the first. I'm hoping that this is going to be more in the future. And a bit of promotion. I like to invite everyone on a collaboration between the consulate in Consulate Indonesia in Perth and Bola Bardip Museum for an event that we call A Day in Indonesia. That will be on the 20th of August, 2022. We're going to have performances from Indonesia. Hopefully, we're going to have a dalang performance as well, a puppet show performance as well. So make sure to check our Instagram account and also the Bola Bardip Museum account, our website, to be involved and be part of that. Thank you very much and have a good night. Stay safe because of the rain and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Listi. As we have now arrived at the end of our today's AIM exhibition launch, may I once again thank the co-hosts for the convening of this event. Thank you very much for all of you. Have a lovely rest of the evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Selamat malam.